And I think it's part of the reason why God in his wisdom didn't just have Matthew say, let me tell you what I saw. And he didn't just have Mark say, hey, I talked to Peter. Let me tell you what Peter told me. And he didn't say, hey, I'm going to get Luke to interview a bunch of eyewitnesses. Let me tell you what Luke got, the information he gathered. And he didn't just say, hey, John, I want you, one person, to write it down and tell everybody what you saw. But in his wisdom, because of the skepticism of mankind, not just in this century, but in every century, even in this century, God in his wisdom did everything possible. There was no video. He did everything. There was no photography. He did everything possible to capture what actually happened in the first century and protected it and delivered it to us in this generation. And if what these books say actually happened, and if Jesus actually said what Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John say he said, then we have reason to pause. And we have reason to reflect and say, just because I've never seen God do anything doesn't mean he hasn't done anything. And just because I've never seen God intervene with humankind, and just because I've never seen God interrupt tragedy doesn't mean he hasn't. And just because I haven't seen a miracle doesn't mean there hasn't been one. And maybe I need to look at the evidence based on the authority of the evidence alone and be careful not to impose my 21st century experience on what maybe God has protected and delivered to me. You know what? This same kind of thinking, and I said this in the first service and people laughed, and I don't mean this to be funny because I'm not trying to make fun of anybody or view. But it's that same reasoning that says that, I grew up here in high school and college that says, once upon a time there was nothing, and then there was something. Once upon a time the universe wasn't, and then, boom, the universe was. And we say, wait a minute, what about a creator? No. We can't talk about a creator because I've decided before we begin the discussion, there's not a creator. There's no intelligent designer. So I will now look at the evidence, and I will come up with a theory, and I will come up with an explanation for the design of the universe, but I cannot factor in the supernatural because I've decided before the discussion begins there is no supernatural. And yet, all of us look at creation and we think somebody had to design this. There had to be a creator. It's too big of a leap of faith to believe that once upon a time the universe wasn't, and boom, the universe was. And from an explosion came us. You know what? I haven't proved anything. All I'm saying is this. What does the universe point toward? Why can't we just go with the conclusion that the universe is pointing toward? Because I've already decided before I look at the evidence, I can't factor in the supernatural. All I want you to hear this morning is this. Be careful. That's not reasonable. That's not logical. If you were on trial for your life, or your child was on trial for your life, would we want the jurors to come in with a predisposition toward what could have happened based on what's happened to them in their lives? No. We would want them to look at the evidence and conclude based on the evidence, not their personal prejudices. And see, my prayer for you, if maybe you're not a religious person or Christian, or you don't know, or you used to be, or you were in and now you're out, here's our prayer during this series, is that just as we believe the design of the universe screams of a designer, in the same way, this is so great, in the same way, these manuscripts send us a message that not only is there a designer and a creator, there's a Savior who is Christ the Lord. And just as God has given us overwhelming evidence in nature that he is alive and well, through the portals of time and through his careful selection and protection, we have the message of forgiveness. Not from one eyewitness, not from two eyewitnesses, but from two eyewitnesses, somebody who interviewed a bunch of eyewitnesses, and then one individual who got his information from one single eyewitness. It's God's way of saying something happened, and here's the explanation as to what happened.